In the quiet hum of the 21st century, under the artificial twilight of 1,000 street lamps and the incessant, blue-white glare of a screen held inches from your face, a silent war is being waged. It's a war you fight every single night, and most nights you lose. Is the war for sleep. We chase it with melatonin gummies, track it with expensive watches, and meditate to apps that promise tranquility, yet we wake up exhausted, our minds already racing, our bodies feeling older than they are. We've been told the sacred number is 8. 8 solid, uninterrupted hours. A monolithic block of unconsciousness that we must achieve, or else we are failing. Failing at our health, our productivity, our very lives. But what if I told you that this obsession, this nightly struggle for an unbroken 8 hours, is a historical mistake? What if the blueprint for the most effective, most restorative sleep in all of human history wasn't forged in the sterile sleep lab, but in the smoky, fire-lit heart of a Norse longhouse? You hear the word Viking, and your mind conjures images of fury and fire. Axe-wielding berserkers leaping from longships, fierce explorers carving their names into the map of the known world, a people defined by relentless, brutal expansion. It seems impossible, a paradox, to suggest that these same people, these icons of warfare and hardship, were also the undisputed masters of slumber. And yet, the evidence, buried in the frozen soil of Scandinavia, whispered in the verses of their epic sagas, and now confirmed by the cutting edge of sleep science, is overwhelming. The Norse inhabitants of the Viking Age, from roughly 793 to 1066 CE, didn't just sleep. They cultivated a relationship with rest so profound, so perfectly attuned to human biology and the natural world, that it may have been the secret fuel for their remarkable civilization. They didn't fight for sleep. Sleep was their birthright, an ocean they navigated with the same innate skill as the unforgiving North Sea. Let's journey back. Imagine not the battlefield, but the homestead. Picture Thorvald, a shipbuilder on the jagged coast of Norway, as winter's icy grip tightens and the sun becomes a fleeting visitor. The golden glow of the central hearth fire, the only light against a profound ink-black darkness, paints long, dancing shadow across the heavy wooden beams above. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, of drying herbs, of wool and worn leather. This isn't an environment of anxiety, it's a cocoon. Here, in this communal space, sleep wasn't a scheduled appointment to be kept, but a natural tide that ebbed and flowed with the world outside. We will find that the very structure of their days, the food they ate, the beds they slept in, and their philosophical acceptance of rest created a perfect storm of conditions for what modern science now desperately tries to recreate for its sleep-deprived patients. The archaeological Folka findings, from the preserved farmsteads of Iceland to the bustling Viking metropolis of Jorvik in England, tell a story not of restless warriors, but of a people deeply in tune with a rhythm we have long forgotten. This isn't just a historical curiosity, this is a lesson, a challenge to our modern assumptions and a potential key to unlocking our own troubled relationship with the night. As we explore their world, we will see that their supposed primitive practices were, in fact, incredibly sophisticated, a masterclass in sleep hygiene that shames our modern methods. The evidence suggests a provocative, almost unbelievable conclusion. Despite their fierce reputation, the people of the Viking Age may have been the most well-rested humans in history, a quality that perhaps, just perhaps, was the true source of their legendary strength, their astounding creativity, and their unquenchable spirit of exploration. When it comes to the sacred art of sleep, we have everything to learn from our Norse ancestors. The modern world's obsession with a single, unbroken 8-hour block of sleep is a lie. It is a historical anomaly, a ghost born from the soot-stained gears of the Industrial Revolution, solidified by the harsh glare of the electric light bulb, and enforced by the tyranny of the 9-to-5 workday. It is a schedule built for machines, not for humans. For millennia, our ancestors slept in a way that would seem utterly alien to us today, a pattern that sleep historians now call biphasic or segmented sleep. And no one, it seems, practiced this more naturally or more effectively than the Vikings. They didn't see the night as a single dark chasm to be crossed in one leap of unconsciousness. They saw it as a territory to be inhabited, with its own rhythms, its own quiet activities, its own unique consciousness. The clues are embedded in the very bones of their language, the Old Norse tongue, The sagas, those epic tales of heroes and gods, don't just speak of sleep. They make subtle, telling distinctions. They speak of Fyrisvefn, the first sleep, and they refer to waking in the deep middle of the night, a period of quiet wakefulness, before returning to a second sleep that would last until the dawn. While these terms aren't a rigid formula found in every text, their existence points to a fundamentally different understanding of the night. It hints at a landscape of rest with two distinct phases, separated by a calm and accepted period of wakefulness. We see this pattern lived out in their stories. In the Grettis saga, the legendary outlaw Grettir Asmundarson, a man of immense strength and troubled spirit, is described as rising from his bed after his first sleep is done. He doesn't lie there wrestling with insomnia, cursing his wakefulness. He gets up. He moves through the sleeping longhouse, tending to chores, his mind clear in the profound stillness, before willingly returning to his furs for his second final rest. In Egil's saga we find similar scenes. Characters waking in the dead of night not with a sense of panic, but with a purpose. To hold a quiet conversation, to lay a plan, to simply be awake in a world that was temporarily theirs alone. This isn't just the stuff of literature. The cold, hard earth confirms it. At archaeological digs in places like Jorvik, the bustling Viking heart of what is now York, England, the very layout of their homes tells the story. The longhouses, those great communal halls, were built around a central long fire pit. And the forensic evidence from these pits, the layers of ashen, charcoal, shows they weren't just lit in the evening and left to die. They were tended, fed, and managed throughout the entire night. This suggests a regular, accepted human presence. It suggests that people were getting up, adding wood, and moving about in those hours we now consider the domain of tossing and turning. The house was alive, breathing, even in the deepest part of the night. Let's imagine it. Let's step into the life of Bjorn Haraldsson, a farmer in the Trondheim region of Norway, as the long, oppressive winter night descends. After an evening meal of smoked fish and dense rye bread, after the stories have been told and the day's tools have been put away, the household retires, not to private, isolated rooms, but to the long, fur-lined sleeping platforms that run the length of the hall. The fire is banked, casting a dim, hypnotic glow. Darkness, a true and total darkness we can no longer comprehend, swallows the world. Bjorn falls asleep around 8 p.m, a deep and heavy slumber. Then sometime after midnight he wakes. But this waking is different. It's not jarring. It's a gentle, natural surfacing. The world is silent save for the crackle of the embers and the soft breathing of his family around him. This period, this hour or two of wakefulness, isn't a disorder. It's an opportunity. He rises, stretching in the cool air. He adds a log to the hearth, the sparks swirling up into the gloom like fleeting stars. He might step outside into the piercing, clean cold to check on his precious livestock, their warmth and scent a comfort against the night. He could return to share a quiet cup of ale with his wife, who has also woken, their voices low and intimate in the shared darkness. This is not wasted time. It is a period of serene reflection, of quiet productivity, of connection. Then, feeling the gentle pull of slumber return, he goes back to his sleeping platform for his second sleep, a rest that will carry him peacefully to the first hint of dawn. Modern science is only now catching up to this ancient wisdom. The work of historian A. Roger Ekirch, who unearthed hundreds of historical references to this segmented sleep pattern across pre-industrial Europe, proves that this was the norm, not the exception. Our bodies, it turns out, are wired for it. Research has shown that during this midnight waking period, the human brain is bathed in a surge of the hormone prolactin. Prolactin is associated with a feeling of deep calm, of peacefulness, of well-being. It's the same hormone that floods a new mother's system, fostering a sense of blissful connection with her baby. The Vikings, by embracing this natural waking period, were likely experiencing a nightly dose of this serene meditative state, a state we now try to achieve with mindfulness apps and medication. For a people living at the top of the world, where winter nights could stretch for an agonizing 18 or 20 hours, this pattern was a profound adaptation. Trying to sleep through that entire expanse of darkness would be biologically impossible and psychologically crushing. Segmented sleep broke the endless night into manageable pieces, creating a rhythm that was not only more natural for the human body, but perfectly suited to their extreme environment. Perhaps no factor was more powerful, more elemental to the superior quality of Viking sleep than their relationship with the night's great ally, darkness. It is a relationship so fundamentally different from our own that it's almost impossible for us to truly comprehend. We, the people of the perpetual twilight, have banished true darkness. We have chased it from our cities with a flood of electric light, sealed it out of our homes with blackout curtains, born of a desperate attempt to mimic what was once a global birthright, and then, in the final act of irony, we invite its greatest enemy directly into our beds, the piercing, melatonin-killing blue glow of a smartphone screen. We have come to fear the dark, to see it as an empty, unproductive void. For the Vikings, darkness was not a void. It was a presence. It was a cloak, a shelter, a sacred space that governed the rhythms of their entire existence and unlocked the deepest chambers of restorative sleep. The geography of their world demanded this intimacy. In the heartlands of Scandinavia, Iceland, and Greenland, the sun is not a reliable, steady friend. It is a creature of wild extremes. In the depths of winter, it becomes a pale ghost, skimming the horizon for a few fleeting grey hours before abandoning the world to a staggering, profound darkness that could reign for 20 hours a day. Then, in the height of summer, the roles reverse. The sun becomes a relentless tyrant, the famous midnight sun that circles the sky without setting, bathing the world in an eerie, endless daylight. The Vikings didn't just live in these conditions, they built their entire world in response to them. Their homes, the legendary longhouses, are a testament to this adaptation. When archaeologists unearth these structures, one of the first things they notice is the near total absence of windows. The few that did exist were little more than small slits, easily covered with a piece of stretched animal membrane or a simple wooden shutter. The primary source of light, day or night, was the long central hearth. As the fire was banked low for the night, the interior of that longhouse would be plunged into a darkness so complete, so absolute that most of us have never experienced it. It was a blackness that didn't just hide things, it felt like it had substance, a velvety weight that insulated the sleeper from all visual stimulation. This is not poetry, it is biology. Modern sleep science has revealed with incontrovertible proof that the human brain requires this kind of profound darkness to do its most important nightly work. When your optic nerves detect the absence of light, it sends a signal to a tiny pinecone-shaped gland in the center of your brain called the pineal gland. This is the trigger. This is the command to begin producing melatonin, the master hormone of sleep. Melatonin doesn't just make you drowsy, it orchestrates the entire symphony of sleep, guiding you through the critical phases of deep sleep and REM sleep, where your body repairs tissues, consolidates memories, and cleanses the brain of metabolic waste. The Vikings, living their entire lives by the rise and fall of the sun, would have experienced a nightly flood of melatonin so robust and perfectly timed that it would be the envy of any modern sleep clinic. A landmark study published in the Journal of Sleep Research took modern, office-dwelling subjects and sent them camping for a week, with no artificial light of any kind. Within days, their melatonin production had not only increased by over 30%, but their entire sleep-wake cycle had perfectly synchronized with the natural sunset and sunrise. The Vikings didn't need a one-week camping trip to achieve this. This was their entire life. Of course, they weren't entirely without artificial light. They had the fire. They had tallow candles rendered from animal fat and simple oil lamps. But these light sources were fundamentally different from our modern illumination, and that difference is everything. First, their light was of a different character, a different colour. The light from a flame is on the warm end of the spectrum. It's yellow, orange, and red. Modern light from LEDs, televisions, and phone screens is packed with blue spectrum light. Why does this matter? Because blue light is the most potent natural signal to the human brain that it is daytime. It slams the brakes on melatonin production. Exposure to blue light in the evening can delay the onset of sleep by hours and slash melatonin levels in half. The warm, gentle glow of a Viking fire would have had a minimal, almost negligible effect on their circadian rhythms. Second, their light was dim. An archaeological experiment recreating a Viking-era tallow candle found it produced about 10 to 15 lumens of light. A single modern 60-watt equivalent LED bulb pumps out over 800 lumens. The sheer intensity of our light is biologically disruptive. And third, their light was precious. Making a candle or rendering oil took time and resources. Light was not wasted. It was used with purpose, not left on to flood empty rooms. The sagas speak of the careful management of lighting, a resource to be conserved. This scarcity was unintentionally a powerful form of sleep hygiene. But what about those endless summer days? This is where we see their conscious, active adaptation. They understood the need for darkness, even when nature refused to provide it. Archaeological sites reveal the use of thick, heavy wool hangings and curtains that could be drawn over the few openings, blocking out the persistent midnight sun. In Iceland, some dwellings feature sleeping areas ingeniously built into the thickest part of the turf walls, creating earthen cocoons of darkness, insulated from the light outside. The sagas mention arranging sleeping chambers to minimize light exposure during the summer months. This wasn't a passive existence, it was an active and intelligent management of their environment to preserve the sanctity of sleep. Their relationship with light went even deeper, extending to the subtle cycles of the moon. The Old Norse calendar was largely lunar. A full moon, which can be surprisingly bright in a world without light pollution, is mentioned in sagas as a time of restlessness or increased activity. Modern science has validated this, with studies showing that even when subjects can't see the moon, their sleep patterns change during the full moon, with less deep sleep and a longer time to fall asleep. The Vikings' awareness of these cycles reveals a level of attunement to the natural world that we have completely lost, a sensitivity that almost certainly guided their behaviour and their relationship with rest. This intimate, respectful and necessary dance with darkness, a dance that ended abruptly with the invention of the light bulb, was a cornerstone of their sleep superiority, creating a neurochemical environment for rest that our modern, light-drenched world can no longer provide. One of the most profound, and perhaps most challenging, disconnects between our modern lives and the world of the Vikings is the very concept of where and how we sleep. We have been conditioned to believe that sleep is a private, solitary act. The ideal is a silent, isolated room, a personal sanctuary with a door that closes, shutting out the world. The master bedroom is a cornerstone of modern architecture, a symbol of independence and personal space. But for the Vikings, this notion would have been not just alien, but deeply undesirable, even dangerous. Sleep, for them, was not a retreat from the world, it was a deeper immersion into the heart of their community. It was fundamentally, powerfully and strategically communal, an arrangement that fostered a sense of security and psychological well-being, so potent that it almost certainly enhanced the quality of their rest. When archaeologists peel back the layers of time at a Viking settlement, from the windswept shores of Lance aux Meadows in Newfoundland to the bustling streets of Dublin, they find a consistent architectural truth. The longhouse was the heart of the home, and the heart of the longhouse was the communal sleeping arrangement. Running along the interior walls were long, raised platforms of earth or wood. During the day, covered in furs and woven textiles, they were benches for sitting, for working on crafts, for sharing stories. But as darkness fell, they transformed. These were not divided into cubicles or individual bunks. They were continuous shared spaces where the entire household, the chieftain and his wife, their children, their unmarried relatives, their farmhands and even their slaves slept together, side by side in the shared warmth and security of the hearth. At Stung, a remarkably well-preserved Viking-age farmstead in Iceland, frozen in time by a volcanic eruption, we see this layout with breathtaking clarity. The raised platforms are unmistakable, the designated spaces for the collective slumber of the entire household. This wasn't a temporary measure for hard times, this was the design. This was the way. Imagine the household of Gunnar Hamundarbn, the great warrior from the famous Njál saga, at his farm in southern Iceland. Archaeological evidence from similar homesteads allows us to paint a vivid picture. His longhouse, perhaps 20 metres long, is a single open space. As night falls, the entire population of his farm, maybe 15 or 20 people, retires to the platforms. Gunnar and his wife Halgadur would occupy the most honoured position, the Onvigi, likely the section closest to the fire, perhaps slightly more elevated or marked by carved posts, a subtle nod to their status. Their children would be nearby, nestled among relatives and trusted workers. In the deep, bone-chilling cold of an Icelandic winter, this arrangement was a matter of survival. The collective body heat of 20 people in an enclosed, well-insulated space was a living furnace, a resource far more valuable than any amount of firewood. It was a simple, elegant solution to one of life's harshest challenges, but the benefits went far beyond mere warmth. In an age where the rule of law was often enforced by the strength of your own arm and the loyalty of your kin, physical security was a constant concern. The communal sleeping arrangement was the most effective security system imaginable. It was a living, breathing alarm network. With 20 people sleeping in a shared space, the statistical probability of someone waking to a strange noise, the crunch of footsteps on snow, the whinny of a spooked horse, the low growl of a dog was incredibly high. The sagas are filled with this exact scenario. In Njál saga itself, when Gunnar's enemies creep towards his farm under the cloak of darkness, intent on murder, their plan is foiled. They are overheard. Someone inside, likely in this drowsy state between sleep cycles, hears a faint, unnatural sound and raises the alarm. The house springs to life not from a deep, disoriented sleep, but from a state of shared, watchful rest. This pattern is repeated time and again in the literature. It wasn't just about preventing attack. For a traveller, sleeping in a strange hall, being surrounded by others, offered protection against the unknown. The Havamal, that collection of Norse wisdom, advises travellers to be wary and sleep with their weapons close, but sleeping in a hall full of people, even strangers, was infinitely safer than sleeping alone in the wilderness. The communal arrangement was a shield woven from the light sleep and shared vigilance of the group. Modern science is beginning to illuminate the profound psychological power of this arrangement. Humans are social primates. Our brains are hardwired to feel safer, calmer, and less vigilant when we are in the presence of our trusted social group. That feeling of safety is a powerful prerequisite for deep restorative sleep. Research published in the journal Sleep Health has drawn a direct line between strong social connection and superior sleep quality. The physical proximity of others during our most vulnerable state seems to downregulate the brain's threat detection systems, reducing the ambient anxiety that keeps so many of us in a state of light, unsatisfying sleep. For Viking children, growing up enveloped by the sounds and presence of their entire family, every night would have fostered a deep-seated sense of security that modern sleep training, with its emphasis on solitary sleep from a young age, often disrupts. We see hints of this psychological need in the sagas. In the Grettis saga, the hero, condemned to a life of outlawry and isolation, laments his lonely existence. He specifically misses the security of sleeping amongst his kinsmen in a full hall. This wasn't just a matter of comfort. It was a recognition of a deep psychological need for connection during the vulnerable hours of the night. Of course, the immediate modern question is, what about privacy? What about intimacy? This is where we see their sophisticated cultural adaptations. Archaeological digs have unearthed remnants of textile curtains and dividers, likely made of heavy wool, that could be hung to create semi-private spaces along the sleeping platforms. The sagas also mention something called a lokrekja, or closed bed piece, a kind of wooden box-like structure, almost a small room built onto the sleeping platform. These were status symbols, usually reserved for the head of the household and his wife, but they were also a clever solution, providing a private chamber within the larger communal space. And, as we've seen, the biphasic sleep pattern, with its quiet midnight waking period, would have provided natural serene opportunities for intimacy when the rest of the household was either in their first deep sleep or engaged in other quiet tasks. Within this communal framework, there were still subtle markers of a social hierarchy. Higher status individuals got the prime real estate, the warmest spot near the fire, perhaps with better quality furs. At a chieftain's longhouse excavated at Borg in the Lofton Islands, the high-status sleeping area was clearly delineated, slightly raised, and contained traces of more luxurious bedding materials. This system maintained social order while preserving the immense security and psychological benefits of sleeping together. This communal sleep, a practice that we might dismiss as primitive or crude, was in fact a highly evolved adaptation, a powerful tool that strengthened social bonds, ensured physical safety, and created a psychological environment of trust and calm that is arguably the perfect and now lost ingredient for a truly good night's sleep. When we think of a comfortable bed today, our minds conjure images of plush pillow-top mattresses, memory foam that cradles every contour, and a mountain of soft, fluffy pillows. We spend thousands of dollars engineering the perfect soft insulated cocoon. The Viking bed, by comparison, seems impossibly primitive, a rough assembly of wood, straw and animal skins. Yet if we strip away our modern biases and look at it through the lens of ergonomics and sleep science, a startling picture emerges. The Viking sleeping environment, built entirely from the raw materials of their immediate world, may have provided a healthier, more supportive and more thermally regulated sleep surface than the expensive synthetic creations most of us sleep on tonight. Their bed wasn't a luxury item, it was a carefully constructed tool for rest, and its design principles are now being rediscovered by modern science as the keys to optimal sleep posture and health. The foundation of the Viking bed was the platform itself. As we've seen, these were typically raised wooden structures, built of solid planks or split logs. This simple act of raising the sleeping surface off the ground was a critical first step, providing an essential barrier against the cold, damp earth of the northern climates. At the Firkat settlement in Denmark, archaeologists found beautifully preserved examples, noting that the platforms were often built with a slight, almost imperceptible incline, angled gently up towards the wall. This meant a sleeper's head would be naturally positioned slightly higher than their feet. Today, sleep specialists and doctors recommend this very same gentle elevation for people who suffer from issues like acid reflux or certain respiratory problems, as it uses gravity to keep stomach acids down and airways open. It's a simple, brilliant piece of ergonomic design, built right into the architecture of their homes. This wooden base provided something else that is crucial for sleep health: a firm, stable foundation. It prevented the sagging and unevenness that could lead to poor spinal alignment. Upon this solid foundation, the Vikings built their mattress, layer by layer, from the bounty of nature. The core of this mattress was almost always a thick layer of locally harvested vegetation. Preserved remnants from sites in Iceland and Greenland show that this was typically straw, hay, or sometimes heather. Analysis reveals they were selective, often choosing softer grasses, and that this bedding was changed regularly, likely with the seasons. To our modern sensibilities, a straw mattress sounds like the definition of discomfort. But consider its properties. Straw provides a unique combination of firmness and responsiveness. It doesn't collapse into a soft pile. It retains a natural springiness that conforms to the body's shape while still offering substantial support. Modern ergonomic research is increasingly pointing to the idea that a medium-firm, responsive surface is far better for long-term spinal health than the ultra-soft mattresses that have become popular. A mattress that is too soft allows the spine, particularly the heavier pelvic area, to sag out of its natural alignment, leading to chronic back pain and stiffness. The Viking's straw bed provided precisely the kind of supportive yet yielding surface that high-end orthopedic mattress companies now spend millions trying to replicate with complex layers of foam and coils. Furthermore, straw is incredibly breathable. It allows for constant air circulation, which helps to dissipate body heat and moisture, preventing the uncomfortable, sleep-disrupting overheating that is common with dense, synthetic foam mattresses. Their practice of regularly replacing the straw also meant they were constantly refreshing their sleeping surface, preventing the build-up of dust mites, mold and other allergens that accumulate in modern mattresses over years. Above this straw core, they layered textiles. We know from countless textile fragments found in burial sites and settlements that wool was the fabric of the Viking world. They would have used coarse, heavy woolen blankets, known as varafeld or vadmal, directly on top of the straw. This added a layer of softness and, crucially, prevented the straw from poking through. But wool's greatest contribution was its almost magical ability to regulate temperature. Wool is an incredible natural insulator, but it's also highly breathable and can absorb up to 30% of its own weight in moisture without feeling damp. This means it wicks sweat away from the body, keeping the sleeper dry while trapping a layer of warm air close to the skin. It creates a perfect, stable microclimate around the body, keeping you warm when it's cold and cool when it's warm. It's a natural smart fabric that helps maintain the stable body temperature that is so critical for staying in the deeper, most restorative stages of sleep. For those with the means, the top layer was the ultimate luxury and a powerful status symbol: animal furs. High-status graves like the magnificent Oseberg ship burial in Norway contained the remains of bear skins, fox pelts, and the sheepskins that were clearly used as bedding. These furs offered unparalleled softness and insulation. Like wool, fur provides incredible temperature regulation, creating a sumptuous and healthy sleeping surface. Imagine Astrid, the wife of a prosperous chieftain near modern-day Trondheim. Her bed would have been a masterpiece of natural engineering. The solid, slightly inclined wooden platform, a deep base of fresh, fragrant rye straw, a thick layer of hand-woven woolen cloth, and finally, the luxurious warmth of several sheepskins and a prized bearskin. This bed would have provided her with a level of ergonomic support and thermal regulation that would be the envy of any modern sleep lab. Even their approach to head support was different. The modern cloud-like pillow is another historical novelty. Archaeological finds, like a preserved leather cushion from the Coppergate dig in York, suggest that Viking headrests were smaller and firmer, typically a cushion stuffed with feathers, wool, or even dried moss. While it sounds less comfortable from a physiological standpoint, it may have been superior. Overly soft, thick pillows can force the neck into an unnatural upward angle, misaligning the cervical spine and leading to neck pain and poor sleep posture. A firmer, smaller support that primarily fills the space under the neck, rather than lifting the entire head, is now often recommended by chiropractors and physical therapists for maintaining proper spinal alignment during sleep. The Viking bed in its entirety was a system, a layered, breathable, supportive system built from natural organic materials. While it lacked the artificial softness we now crave, it provided the very things our bodies actually need for healthy rest: firm spinal support, natural temperature control, and a clean, breathable environment. It's a testament to their practical genius that the principles of their primitive beds are now being celebrated and remarketed as the cutting edge of modern, natural and orthopedic sleep solutions. While the Vikings are eternally celebrated for their martial prowess and their mastery of the sea, we often overlook a different kind of mastery: their intimate and sophisticated knowledge of the natural pharmacy growing all around them. The sagas and archaeological evidence reveal a world where healing and nature were intrinsically linked, where a healer's knowledge of plants was as vital as a warrior's knowledge of the sword. This pharmacopoeia was rich and varied, and a significant portion of it was dedicated to the subtle art of calming the mind, easing anxiety, and coaxing the body into a state of deep and restful sleep. This use of natural, plant-based sedatives, combined with the ideal environmental and social conditions we've already explored, added another powerful layer to their sleep superiority, a gentle herbal nudge towards tranquility that modern science is only now beginning to fully appreciate and validate. The soil itself tells the story. At major Viking settlements like Jorvik in England, Hedeby in Denmark, and even far-flung colonial outposts, archaeologists have conducted meticulous pollen analysis and sifted through ancient refuse pits, known as middens. What they found is a botanical treasure trove. Preserved seeds, pollen grains, and plant fragments reveal that the Vikings weren't just passively consuming the plants in their environment. They were actively cultivating, harvesting, and using a wide array of medicinal herbs. Among the most common finds are the very same plants that now line the shelves of modern health food stores, sold as natural sleep aids. They found caches of valerian root, a potent sedative, hops, the same plant used to bitter beer but also a powerful relaxant, linden flowers, known for their calming properties, and chamomile, the gentle, universal sleep inducer. The sheer quantity and distribution of these plants suggests that this was not fringe knowledge held by a few specialists, but a widespread common understanding of herbal medicine. At a 10th century settlement near Kaupang in Norway, a building was unearthed that seems to have been the home and workshop of a healer. It was filled with the preserved remains of numerous medicinal plants and specialized pottery that suggests the brewing and storage of herbal remedies, a clear indication of a sophisticated and dedicated herbal practice. While the sagas are primarily tales of action and conflict, they contain tantalizing glimpses into this world. In Egil's saga, there's a scene where a special drink is prepared to help an ailing and distraught character finally find the peace of sleep. Other sagas make passing references to herbal treatments for anxiety, grief, and what we would today call insomnia. For more detailed recipes, we can look at slightly later medieval Scandinavian medical texts like the 13th century Danish book known as Henrik Harpestreng's Lægebog. These texts, which are widely believed to have preserved much of the older, pre-Christian oral traditions of the Viking Age, are filled with detailed instructions. They read like a Norse herbalist's handbook, with recipes for sleep-inducing preparations using the very same herbs found in the archaeological record. They describe how to prepare valerian root to bring quiet sleep, and how to use hops to calm a troubled mind. These texts bridge the gap between the physical evidence in the ground and the lived experience of the people, showing a clear, continuous tradition of using nature's remedies to govern the delicate state of sleep. Let's look closer at this Viking sleep pharmacy. The star player was almost certainly valerian, Valeriana officinalis. This unassuming plant with its small sweet-smelling flowers has a root with powerful sedative properties. Modern science has identified the active compounds, like valerianic acid, which work on the GABA receptors in the brain. GABA is the body's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It calms nerve activity. Incredibly, valerianic acid works on the same receptors as modern anti-anxiety drugs like Valium and Xanax, but without the same heavy side effects or high risk of dependency. The Vikings, through generations of trial and error, had discovered a natural tranquilizer. Hops, Humulus lupulus, was another key ingredient. While we know they were master brewers, the Vikings were also aware of the soporific effects of the hop flower. We now know that hops contain a compound called methylbutanol, which has a mild sedative effect on the central nervous system. In fact, the phenomenon of hop pickers' fatigue, a deep drowsiness experienced by workers harvesting hops, has been documented for centuries. Modern studies have shown that hops, especially when combined with valerian, can be a remarkably effective sleep aid, reducing the time it takes to fall asleep and improving overall sleep quality. The list goes on. They used linden or lime flowers, Telia species, which we now know contain flavonoids that have a mild sedative and anxiety-reducing effect. A warm tea made from linden flowers is still a traditional folk remedy for sleeplessness throughout Scandinavia today. Chamomile, Matricaria chamomilla, was also present. Its gentle sedative effects derived from a flavonoid called apigenin, which, like valerian, binds to the same calming receptors in the brain. They also had access, through their vast trade networks, to herbs like lavender. While not native, lavender was prized for its scent and calming properties. We now have robust scientific evidence that simply inhaling the scent of lavender can lower heart rate, reduce blood pressure, and improve sleep quality. It's entirely plausible that the Vikings, with their understanding of herbal medicine, would have used these aromatic plants in ways that capitalized on these effects. Let's imagine Thora, a healer in a village near modern-day Roskilde. When a man comes to her, tormented by grief and unable to find rest, she wouldn't have been helpless. She would have gone to her collection of dried herbs. She might have prepared a decoction, simmering valerian root and hops in water to create a potent, earthy tea. She might have instructed him to drink it slowly in the quiet hours after his first sleep. Perhaps she would have also given him a small leather pouch filled with crushed lavender and chamomile to place near his head as he slept, allowing the calming aroma to work its subtle magic throughout the night. This wasn't witchcraft, it was science, observed and perfected over centuries. The administration of these herbs likely blended the practical with the ritualistic. The sagas suggest that the roles of healer, shaman, and wise woman are often intertwined. The act of preparing and giving a remedy would have carried a psychological weight, a power that we now recognize as the placebo effect, but which they would have seen as the spiritual power of the plants and the healer herself. This combination of potent, pharmacologically active compounds with the profound psychological impact of ritual and belief would have made these remedies incredibly effective. It was a holistic approach, treating the anxious mind and the restless body as one. This gentle, natural, and effective use of herbal medicine stands in stark contrast to our modern approach of often hitting sleep problems with the chemical sledgehammer of prescription sleeping pills, which can disrupt natural sleep architecture and lead to dependency. The Vikings' approach was one of partnership with nature, a partnership that provided yet another essential pillar, supporting their unparalleled and deeply restorative relationship with sleep. The extreme and dramatic swings of the seasons in the north were not just a backdrop to Viking life, they were the very metronome that set the pace of their existence. The modern world has largely flattened this natural rhythm. We live in climate-controlled homes, work in artificially lit offices, and eat strawberries in January. Our lives are a relentless, monotonous hum, disconnected from the grand, cyclical breathing of the planet. The Vikings, by contrast, lived in a world of staggering seasonal contrast, and their sleep patterns, like everything else in their lives, would have danced to this powerful primordial beat. Their ability to adapt their sleep schedules, their activities, and even their social arrangements to the vast differences between the endless light of summer and the profound darkness of winter, was not a sign of a primitive existence. It was a mark of a deeply sophisticated and resilient culture, one that understood that true health and productivity come from working in harmony with nature, not in constant opposition to it. Let's begin with the summer. Imagine standing on a fjord in western Norway in the heart of June. The sun, a blazing orb, circles the sky, dipping tantalizingly towards the horizon around midnight before pulling back up again, refusing to surrender the world to darkness. For weeks on end, there is no true night, only a strange ethereal twilight. For a culture so deeply tied to agriculture, trade and exploration, this was a gift. This was the season of frantic, relentless activity. The sagas describe summers as a time for raiding, for trading voyages that could last for months, for building ships, for planting and tending crops, for mending fences and buildings, all the work that was impossible during the frozen winter months. Sleep, by necessity, would have become a compressed and strategic affair. It wasn't a time for long, luxurious slumbers, but for efficient restorative naps snatched whenever possible. They would not have viewed this as a sleep debt in the modern sense, but as a natural response to the demands and opportunities of the season. The Havamal, that great repository of Viking wisdom, offers advice that speaks directly to this seasonal pressure. It warns, "The unwise man is awake all night, worrying about everything. When morning comes, he is tired, and all his troubles are just as they were." This isn't just a generic warning against anxiety. It can be interpreted as a piece of practical advice for the high-pressure summer months. It suggests a cultural awareness that even when the sun is still up at midnight, the body and mind require rest. It implies a need for self-discipline, to consciously choose to sleep even when the environment is screaming at you to stay awake and keep working. As we've seen, they had practical methods for this, using thick wool curtains to create artificial darkness in their sleeping areas. They would have managed their sleep with an intuitive understanding that this period of intense work and shortened rest was temporary, a necessary sprint before the long marathon of winter. Then, as the earth tilted away from the sun, the great shift would begin. The days would shorten dramatically, and the long, deep and restorative winter would arrive. For us, winter is often seen as a grim, depressing season to be endured. For the Vikings, it was something else entirely. It was the season of rest, of community, of craft, and of sleep. With outdoor work ground to a halt by snow and ice, and with darkness reigning for the majority of the day, life moved indoors, contracting into the warm, smoky heart of the longhouse. This was the time when sleep could expand to its natural biphasic rhythm. The long nights provided a vast canvas for the two-sleep pattern to unfold without pressure. There was no alarm clock, no factory whistle, no urgent need to be in the fields at dawn, because dawn itself was a late and fleeting visitor. This extended period of rest was not seen as laziness. It was a vital, necessary part of the yearly cycle. It was the time for the body to repair and recover from the strenuous work of the summer. It was the time for stories to be told, for knowledge to be passed down, for social bonds to be deepened in the enforced intimacy of the longhouse. The archaeological evidence from winter dwellings supports this picture of a season dedicated to rest and indoor life. Excavations show that winter structures were often smaller, more heavily insulated, and designed to maximize the retention of heat. This created a perfect womb-like environment, ideal for long periods of rest and sleep. The finds within these winter houses shift from a focus on large agricultural tools to smaller, more intricate craft items, needles for sewing, spindle whorls for spinning wool, small knives for carving. These are the artifacts of the Viking winter. And when would much of this quiet, focused work have taken place? It's highly probable that the midnight waking period during the long winter nights was a key time for this kind of productivity. With the mind calm and alert after the first sleep and the world outside locked in a frozen silence, the quiet hours by the fire would have been a perfect time for an individual to work on a carving, for a woman to spin thread, or for a couple to quietly mend their fishing nets. This wasn't insomnia, it was a period of peaceful, productive wakefulness, a gift of the dark season. This seasonal rhythm of sleep, compressed and efficient in the summer, expansive and restorative in the winter, would have had profound benefits for their physical and mental health. The deep rest of the winter would have allowed their bodies to fully recover, their immune systems to strengthen, and their minds to consolidate the experiences and lessons of the active summer months. This cyclical approach to rest is something our modern, seasonless society has completely lost. We expect the same level of productivity from ourselves in the dark depths of January as we do in the bright energy of July, and we wonder why we feel so often burned out and exhausted. The Vikings understood on a deep cultural level that humans are not machines. We are biological creatures tied to the rhythms of the natural world. Their ability to ebb and flow with the seasons, to embrace periods of intense activity followed by periods of profound rest, may have been one of the most significant yet overlooked factors contributing to their incredible resilience and vitality. They didn't just survive the extreme seasons of the north, they harnessed their power, using the rhythm of light and darkness to orchestrate a year-long symphony of activity and rest that kept their bodies strong and their spirits sharp. This attitude is woven into the fabric of their sagas and their wisdom literature. While these texts are filled with tales of heroic deeds and fierce battles, they also contain a surprising respect for the necessity of rest. There's an understanding that even the greatest warriors are useless if they are exhausted. The sagas describe heroes sleeping deeply before a major battle, a recognition that rest is a source of strength. There isn't the modern sense of shame or guilt associated with sleep. It's simply presented as a fact of life and necessary preparation for action. The Havmal contains several verses that touch upon the proper management of one's life, and sleep is treated as a component to be managed with wisdom, not something to be minimized or defeated. The line warning the unwise man who stays awake all night worrying is a perfect example. The verse doesn't condemn him for being weak or lazy, it calls him unwise. His failure is one of strategy, not of character. He is foolish because he doesn't understand that worry is unproductive and that rest is the solution. This implies a cultural belief that a wise person knows when to stop striving and surrender to sleep, trusting that a rested mind is better equipped to solve problems than an exhausted one. This acceptance would have been particularly powerful when it came to the biphasic sleep pattern. Imagine the difference in mindset. A modern person wakes at 2 a.m, and their immediate thought is often a jolt of panic. Oh no, I'm awake. This is bad. I have that big meeting tomorrow. I'll be useless. Why can't I sleep? This cascade of anxiety triggers a stress response. Cortisol floods the system. The heart rate increases, making a return to sleep all but impossible. Now, imagine a Viking, let's call her Astrid the Weaver, waking at the same hour. Her reaction would be entirely different. There is no panic. There is no sense that something has gone wrong. This is normal. This is the midnight waking. She rises not with a feeling of dread, but with a sense of calm purpose. The house is quiet. The fire needs tending. She can use this quiet hour to work on her loom, the soft clacking of the shuttle, a meditative rhythm in the stillness. She might share a quiet word with her husband, who is carving a spoon by the firelight. This period is not a symptom of a disorder. It is a valued part of her night, a time for quiet productivity, intimacy, or reflection. Because she feels no anxiety about being awake, her body remains in a state of calm. When the natural wave of sleepiness returns, she can simply lie down and drift off again, without the psychological battle that we inflict upon ourselves. Her acceptance of this pattern becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of good sleep. This mindset would have also contributed to a healthier relationship with dreams. In a world without the constant distraction of electric light, television, and the internet, the inner world of dreams and the imagination would have held a much more prominent place. The sagas are filled with portentous dreams that guide the actions of heroes and foretell the future. Dreams were not dismissed as meaningless neural firings. They were seen as a source of wisdom, a connection to the spiritual world, or a window into the subconscious. The midnight waking period, that liminal state between the two sleeps, was often described in pre-industrial cultures as a time particularly ripe for reflecting on dreams. With the visions of the first sleep still fresh in the mind, this quiet meditative hour would have been a perfect time to ponder their meaning. This act of taking dreams seriously, of integrating them into one's conscious life, gives the act of sleeping a deeper sense of purpose. It's not just about physical restoration, it's about engaging with another level of consciousness. This would have transformed sleep from a passive state into an active, meaningful experience, further reducing any anxiety associated with it. This philosophical foundation of acceptance, purpose, and respect for rest is the cultural glue that held the Viking sleep strategy together. It allowed them to seamlessly adapt to the seasons, to embrace the natural biphasic rhythm of their bodies, and to find psychological comfort in the communal darkness of the longhouse. They didn't have sleep scientists to tell them about melatonin or circadian rhythms, but through generations of living in close harmony with the natural world, they had developed a set of cultural practices and a collective mindset that perfectly aligned with human biology. They understood that sleep is not a battle to be won, but a tide to be ridden. It is this final, profound lesson, the lesson of acceptance, that may be the hardest for us to learn, but also the most crucial. We have all the scientific data, the technology, the supplements, but what we lack is the Viking's simple, profound wisdom, the understanding that the best way to find sleep is to stop fighting the darkness and instead to trust in its ancient restorative power.